You expect me to just accept this? In my own house? Julian, look me in the eye and tell me you haven't lost your mind. My voice sliced through the air of our Chicago penthouse like a jagged blade. Julian didn't even flinch. He leaned against the marble kitchen island, swirling a glass of expensive scotch. Ava, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a few months. Liam is my brother, and Sarah is carrying his child. They have nowhere else to go. Where is that famous big heart of yours? My big heart? Or my big bank account? I spat, taking a step toward him. The fury in my chest was a living thing clawing to get out. Liam is 27, Julian. He's a grown man who has spent more time in bars than at work. And this girl, Sarah, she's a 22-year-old Instagram model who looks at you like you're the sun and the stars. You really want me to believe she's Liam's? Suddenly, the door to the hallway opened. Sarah Vance walked in, her hand resting pointedly on her small baby bump. She wore one of my silk robes, the one Julian bought me for our anniversary. Is everything okay? Sarah asked, her voice a fake, sugary whisper. I heard shouting. It's not good for the baby, Julian. My blood boiled. It's Mrs. Sterling to you, I snapped, turning my glare on her. And take off my robe before I rip it off you. Ava, stop it! Julian barked, slamming his glass down. You're acting like a psycho. Sarah is family now. Liam, get in here. Liam Sterling, Julian's younger brother, stumbled into the room looking like the coward he was. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Liam? I said, my voice dangerously low. Look at me. Is this child yours? Because if you lie to me right now, after everything I've done for you, paying your debts, clearing your legal mess, I will personally see to it that you never see a dime of the Sterling Trust. Liam flinched, glancing nervously at Julian. Julian's eyes flashed with a warning. Of course it's mine, Ava. Liam mumbled to the floor. We messed up. I just need help. Julian said you'd understand. Julian says a lot of things. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. I walked right up to Julian, pressing my finger into his chest. Listen to me, you arrogant son of a bitch. I built this life. I wrote the scripts that paid for this penthouse, your firm's expansion, and even the clothes on your back. You think you can bring your little project into my home and tell me to be quiet? Julian's face transformed. The mask of the loving husband slipped, revealing a cold, calculating stranger. He grabbed my wrist, his grip tightening. This house is under the Sterling name, Ava. And as long as I'm the head of this family, my brother stays here. You're a screenwriter. You live in fantasies. But this is the real world. Get used to it or get out. I didn't pull away. I leaned in closer, my eyes burning into his. Head of the family? You're a parasite, Julian. You've been feeding off my talent for a decade. You think you've won? You think this little arrangement is going to work? I looked at Sarah, who was smirking behind Julian's back, and then at Liam, the pathetic puppet. Fine, I said, my voice suddenly calm, the kind of calm that precedes a hurricane. The family stays. But remember this moment, Julian. Remember the look on my face, because I'm done writing fiction. From now on, I'm writing your reality. And I promise you, it's not going to be a happy ending. I turned on my heel and stormed toward the nursery. As I reached the door, I heard Sarah whisper, Is she gone? And Julian's muffled reply. Don't worry, she's just a hysterical woman. She'll fall in line once we get the signatures we need. I stood by my son Noah's bed, my hands shaking with a mix of pure hatred and adrenaline. They didn't just want a room. They wanted my life. They wanted my son's inheritance. Over my dead body, I whispered into the dark. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to my lawyer. Isolate the offshore production accounts. Empty the joint household fund. Now, we're going to war. The morning light in our Chicago penthouse was cold and unforgiving, much like the fire burning in my gut. I didn't hide in my bedroom to mourn. That was the old Ava. The new Ava, the one currently being sharpened by betrayal, walked into the dining room like a queen approaching a gallows. Julian was there, looking disgustingly polished in his tailored suit, sipping espresso as if he hadn't spent the night plotting my ruin. Beside him sat Sarah, draped in my $1,200 silk robe, her hand possessively stroking her baby bump. Across from them, Liam looked like a beaten dog, staring at his plate. Ava, sit down, Julian said, his tone dripping with unearned authority. My mother is coming at noon. We're signing the Sterling Trust amendments. This baby deserves a secure future, and Liam needs to be established as a partner in the firm. I tightened my grip on my mug, the ceramic groaning under the pressure. Secure? With my money? Liam is a leech who couldn't manage a lemonade stand, and she... I pointed a finger at Sarah, my voice slicing through the air like a razor. Is a high-end gold digger who wouldn't be here if you weren't paying her rent. Do you take me for a bank or just a fool? Watch your mouth, Liam barked, finally looking up with a flash of fake bravado. This baby is sterling blood. You're just an in-law who got lucky with a few scripts. I let out a sharp, jagged laugh, my eyes boring into my spineless brother-in-law. Blood? Then why did I see Julian slip into Sarah's bedroom at 2 a.m. last night? And why was the $5,000 prenatal bill at the private clinic on the South Side charged to Julian's supplementary card instead of yours, Liam? Or better yet, why did Julian withdraw $75,000 from our joint household fund last Tuesday? The room went deathly silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Sarah's ragged breathing. Julian's face turned a bruised shade of purple, the veins in his neck bulging. It was a loan, a family matter, Julian hissed, scrambling for a shred of dignity. A loan? I stood up, leaning across the table until I was inches from his face. I could smell the expensive coffee and the stench of his cowardice. Julian, did you forget who I am? I'm a screenwriter. I make a living finding holes in the plot. I study the way people lie for a living. And your story? It's full of cheap, pathetic cliches. You're not an architect of buildings anymore. You're an architect of fraud. I slammed a stack of bank statements onto the table, the paper fluttering like the wings of trapped birds. I've been tracking every cent. You thought I was too busy with my stories to notice the $450,000 missing from the Sterling architecture accounts? You thought I wouldn't notice the deed to the Michigan cottage being transferred? Julian stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. He raised his hand, his eyes wild with a desperate rage. You've always been a controlling bitch, Ava! This is my family's legacy! I didn't flinch. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Do it! Hit me! Give me the physical evidence I need to add to the embezzlement files I've already sent to my lawyer. Hit me, and I'll ensure you leave this house with nothing but the clothes on your back and a prison sentence. Don't forget, Julian, Your firm exists because my scripts paid for the foundation, the walls, and the very air you breathe. He lowered his hand, his teeth grinding so hard I could hear them. He looked at Sarah, then at me, the realization finally sinking in that I wasn't playing a character anymore. "You'll regret this, Ava," he whispered. "You have no idea what my mother is capable of." No. I smiled, a cold, predatory expression that didn't reach my eyes. "You will, because I'm not just writing the script anymore, Julian. I'm directing the finale, and I hope you enjoy the view when I burn this house of cards to the ground." I walked out of the room, my head held high, leaving them to choke on the truth. The war was officially underway. The arrival of Beatrice Sterling was heralded by the scent of Chanel No. 5 and a chilling silence. She swept into the penthouse at noon, her fur coat trailing like a conqueror's cape. She didn't glance at her grandson, Noah. She went straight to Julian, kissing his cheek as if he were a hero rather than a thief caught in the act. "Julian, darling, you look haggard." Beatrice sighed, finally flicking her gaze toward me with the warmth of a dead fish. "Ava, I see you're still clinging to that dreadfully dramatic temperament. I heard there was an incident." I stood by the window, the gray Chicago skyline reflecting my cold resolve. "An incident? Is that what we're calling embezzlement and infidelity now? I suppose in the Sterling Handbook, that covers everything from lying to grand larceny." "Enough!" Julian barked. "Mother, she's been tracking the accounts. She knows about the $450,000. She's threatening to go to the DA." Beatrice sat on my velvet sofa, smoothing her skirt with terrifying composure. She glanced at Sarah, who was huddled in the corner. "Ava, let's be adults. You've had a good run, but Julian needs an heir who isn't tainted by your commoner sensibilities. Sarah is carrying a boy, a true Sterling." The rage in my chest boiled over. "A true Sterling? You mean a pawn to steal my son's inheritance?" "Noah is 5 years old, Beatrice. He is your grandson." "Noah is adequate," Beatrice dismissed. "But he's too much like you. Soft. We need strength. We're offering you a settlement, $75,000. You take the Michigan cottage, keep your royalties, and sign the custody papers for Noah. We won't bring up your instability in court." I froze. "Custody? You want my son?" "A Sterling child stays with the Sterlings," Beatrice added. "Judge Higgins is an old family friend. With Julian's recordings of your outbursts, it won't be hard to prove you're an unfit mother." They weren't just after money. They wanted my soul. I forced my hands to stay still. "You think a few recordings are enough?" I whispered, my voice trembling with a holy fury. "I'm a storyteller, Julian. And the first rule is, never reveal your twist too early." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Julian's voice filled the room, a recording from the baby monitor. "As soon as that trust is signed, I'll kick Ava and that brat to the curb." Julian's face went white. Beatrice's eyes narrowed into slits. "That recording is already in the cloud," I hissed, stepping into Julian's space. "And your friend, Judge Higgins? I've been researching his campaign bribes. You wanted a war? You've got one. But I'm not the victim in this script. I'm the villain you should have feared." I threw the door open. "Beatrice, take your fur and your heir and get out. Julian, Liam, you have 10 minutes to pack. If you're still here at 1, I'm calling the police for home invasion. I've already revoked your key cards. Ava, don't! Liam pleaded. Get out! I roared. As the door slammed, I leaned against it, breathing hard. I was alone, but the silence was beautiful. The real hunt was just beginning. The penthouse was finally quiet, but it was the silence of a ticking bomb. I didn't sit down to cry. I went straight to my office and dialed my forensic accountant, Marcus. Ava, Marcus answered on the second ring. I've been looking at the Sterling architecture books. It's worse than we thought. Julian wasn't just stealing for the mistress. He was laundering money through a shell company called SV Developments. I'm guessing SV stands for Serafina Vance. He's not even creative enough to change the initials, I spat, my fingers flying across my keyboard. How much, Marcus? $750,000 in the last 18 months. He was preparing to bankrupt the firm and leave you with the debt while he and the family vanished to the Cayman Islands. The sheer scale of the betrayal made my vision blur with rage. Freeze everything, Marcus. I want every account tied to my name or the firm locked down. Now. If he tries to swipe a card for a stick of gum, I want it declined. Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I picked up, expecting Julian's pleading. Instead, it was Sarah's sugary, venomous voice. You think you've won, don't you, Ava? She whispered. You kicked us out, but you can't kick the truth out. Julian is with me now at the Waldorf. He's already calling the board of directors. He's telling them you've had a nervous breakdown and are sabotaging the company. Sarah, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You're 22. You're playing a game designed for sharks while you're still a goldfish. Do you really think Julian loves you? He's using your name on those shell companies so you take the fall when the FBI knocks. You're not his queen. You're his fall girl. There was a brief silence on the other end. I had hit a nerve. You're lying, she hissed, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. He loves me. He's going to be the father of my son. He's the father of my son, too, and look what he's doing to him, I countered. Listen carefully, Sarah. Julian is a sinking ship. Bring me the real ledgers from his private safe at the office, and I might forget to mention your name to the district attorney. Otherwise, enjoy giving birth in a federal penitentiary. Go to hell, Ava! She slammed the phone down. I stared at the screen. I knew women like Sarah. She was greedy, but she was also a coward. She wouldn't stay loyal to a man who couldn't pay for her manicure, let alone her legal fees. I grabbed my coat. I needed to get to the office before Julian realized I'd already changed the security codes. As I headed to the elevator, the reflection in the mirror caught my eye. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin pale, but I looked like a predator. Chapter 4. The Reckoning, I muttered to myself. I reached the Sterling Architecture building in record time. The lobby was empty, the night guard nodding off. I bypassed him and took the private express elevator to the penthouse suite. When the doors opened, I saw light spilling from Julian's office. I walked in, silent as a ghost. Julian was there, frantically stuffing files into a briefcase. He looked pathetic, his tie undone, his hair a mess. Leaving so soon? I asked. Julian jumped, nearly knocking over his glass of scotch. Ava, how did you get past security? I am security, Julian. I own the building, Remember? I walked over to his desk and tapped the briefcase. That $750,000 you moved to SV Developments? Marcus found it. The freeze is already in effect. You're broke, Julian. You're worse than broke. You're a felon. You think you can just destroy me? He lunged at me, grabbing my shoulders. I made you. I gave you the status, the name. I slammed my knee into his midsection with every ounce of rage I'd been suppressing. He doubled over, gasping for air. You didn't make me, I hissed, leaning over his trembling form. You were just a prop in my life, and I'm done with this scene. I reached into his open safe and grabbed the black ledger. I'll take this. And Julian, the police are downstairs. I suggest you find a very good lawyer. Though, with your accounts frozen, you might have to settle for a public defender. I walked out as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, echoing through the canyons of downtown Chicago. The blue and red lights of the Chicago PD strobed against the glass walls of the office, turning the sleek architectural models into something garish and distorted. I watched from the balcony as two officers led Julian out in handcuffs. He didn't look like a high-powered architect anymore. He looked like a panicked animal shouting about misunderstandings and spiteful wives to anyone who would listen. I retreated inside, the black ledger tucked firmly under my arm, but the victory felt cold. I knew the Sterlings. They were like cockroaches. They survived everything. The elevator chimed. I expected the police, but instead, Liam stepped out. He looked worse than Julian, disheveled, sweating, and shaking so hard he had to lean against the mahogany doorframe. Ava, please, he croaked, his voice cracking. You have to stop this. Julian is... He's losing his mind. He told me to come here and destroy the servers, but I can't do it. I'm not like him. I sat behind Julian's desk, my desk now, and leaned back. You're exactly like him, Liam. You're a coward who let your brother use you as a cover for his affair. You were willing to let me believe you were the father of Sarah's child, just to keep your allowance. He threatened me. Liam stepped into the office, his hands held out in a pathetic plea. He said if I didn't help him, he'd cut me off from the trust. He said you were going to divorce him anyway and take everything, and I'd end up on the street. I was just trying to survive. By stepping on me? By betraying Noah? I stood up, the fury sparking in my eyes again. Noah adored you, Liam. He called you Uncle Lee, and you were going to help Julian steal his future. Liam sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. He started to sob, loud, ugly heaves that filled the quiet office. I'll tell you everything. I have emails, recordings of Julian talking to Beatrice about the offshore accounts. He even has a second set of books for the museum project. He was overcharging the city and pocketing the difference. I paused. This was the missing piece. The embezzlement from me was personal, but defrauding the city of Chicago? That was a federal death sentence for the firm. Why tell me now? I asked, my voice suspicious. Because Sarah is gone. Liam looked up, his eyes red and hollow. As soon as Julian got arrested, she cleaned out the safe at the hotel and vanished. She didn't care about Julian. She didn't care about the Sterling legacy. She just wanted the cash, and Julian... He's blaming me. He's going to tell the police I was the mastermind. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The vultures were finally eating each other. Here's the deal, Liam, I said, leaning over the desk. You go down to the station right now. You give them those emails. You testify against Julian and Beatrice. You do that, and I might not sue you for every penny you've ever touched. And the trust? He whispered. The trust belongs to Noah. I snapped. You'll never touch a cent of it again. You're going to get a job, Liam, a real one. For the first time in your life, you're going to earn your keep. He nodded frantically, desperate for any lifeline. Okay, I'll do it. I'll tell them everything. As he scrambled back toward the elevator, I felt the weight of the night finally hitting me. I looked at the black ledger on the desk. This was the script Julian had written for himself, a story of greed and arrogance. I was just the editor, cutting out the toxic parts. I picked up the phone and called home. Maria? Is Noah still asleep? I asked, my voice finally softening. Yes, Mrs. Montgomery. He's dreaming of dinosaurs. Are you coming home soon? Soon, I said, looking out at the city that I had fought so hard to keep. The movie is almost over, Maria. The good guy finally won. I hung up and opened the ledger, but as I flipped through the pages, a small, handwritten note fell out from the back cover. It was in Beatrice's elegant, sharp script. The judge is taken care of. Make sure the child is moved to the New York estate by Friday. Ava doesn't need to know until it's done. My blood turned to ice. Friday. That was tomorrow. They weren't waiting for the court. They were planning to kidnap my son. The handwritten note from Beatrice, a chilling testament to her ruthlessness, crumpled in my trembling hand. The judge is taken care of. Make sure the child is moved to the New York estate by Friday. Ava doesn't need to know until it's done. Friday. That was tomorrow. My son, Noah, was sleeping soundly in his bed, oblivious to the monstrous plot unfolding around him. My heart, which I thought had hardened into stone, felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were going for the kill, targeting my most vulnerable point. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to consume me. But years of writing thrillers had taught me one thing. In a crisis, you don't break down. You strategize. I slammed the ledger shut and grabbed my phone. First call. Detective Morales. Detective, it's Ava Montgomery. I have new, urgent information. Julian and Beatrice are planning to abduct my son. They intend to move Noah to their New York estate tomorrow. I have evidence. A note from Beatrice herself. Abduction? Morales' voice was grim. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Montgomery. We'll need that note immediately. Do you have any indication of how they plan to do this? Who will be involved? I don't know the specifics, but Beatrice's note mentions Friday. They wouldn't move him in broad daylight. It has to be tonight or early tomorrow morning. They'll use someone discreet. Maybe one of Beatrice's loyal staff, or a private security firm. My mind raced, trying to anticipate their next move. I need protection for Noah, now, at the penthouse, and I need a warrant to search Beatrice's New York property based on this note. We'll send a unit to your residence immediately, Morales assured me. As for the warrant, that will take time, especially for out-of-state property. But we'll work on it. Don't confront them alone, Mrs. Montgomery. I understand, I said, though I knew that was a lie. If anyone tried to touch Noah, I would confront them. Second call. Maria, Noah's nanny. Maria, are you awake? Listen carefully. I need you to stay with Noah. Don't leave his side for a second. Lock all the doors. Double-check the windows. Don't answer for anyone, not even family, unless it's me or the police, who are on their way. And don't tell Noah anything. Just keep him safe. Maria, bless her calm nature, simply said, Yes, Mrs. Montgomery, I understand. Noah is with me. He's safe. Her steady voice was a lifeline. Third call. Marcus, my forensic accountant. Marcus, I need you to dig into Beatrice Sterling's personal finances. Look for any large, unusual transactions in the last 48 hours. Payments to private security firms, travel agencies, anything that could facilitate an out-of-state move for a child. On it, Ava, Marcus replied, his voice already sharp with focus. I'll pull up everything. I looked at the clock. It was almost 1 a.m. Time was running out. I had to get back to Noah. The thought of them laying a hand on him fueled a cold, burning intensity within me. I was no longer just fighting for justice. I was fighting for my son's very presence in my life. As I sped home, the city lights blurred into streaks of defiance. Every dark alley seemed to hold a lurking threat. Every car beside me a potential accomplice. I was a mother, a screenwriter, and now a warrior. Julian and Beatrice had made their biggest mistake. They had taken a personal vendetta and escalated it into a direct threat against my child. And for that, there would be no forgiveness, no mercy, and no happy ending for them in my script. I pulled into the underground garage of my building, my tires squealing. I barely waited for the elevator doors to close before pressing the button to my penthouse. This wasn't just my home anymore. It was my fortress. And I would defend it, and my son, with everything I had. The elevator doors hissed open, and I didn't just walk out. I charged. The hallway was dimly lit, the shadows stretching like long, hungry fingers. I burst through the front door of the penthouse, my eyes scanning the foyer for any sign of a struggle. "Maria!" I shouted, my voice trembling with suppressed terror. "In here, Mrs. Montgomery." Maria's voice came from the nursery. It was steady, but I could hear the underlying tension. I flew into Noah's room. Maria was sitting in the rocking chair, a heavy brass lamp gripped in her hand like a club. Noah was a tangled mess of limbs and blankets in his crib, his thumb in his mouth, blissfully unaware that he was the prize in a high-stakes war. "The police are in the lobby," I whispered, leaning over the crib to kiss his forehead. His skin was warm, smelling of baby shampoo and innocence. The contrast between his peace and the venom of the Sterling family made me want to scream. "Has anyone called?" I asked Maria. "The intercom buzzed 5 minutes ago," she whispered back. "They said they were maintenance coming to check a leak. I told them to come back in the morning. They didn't leave until I threatened to call security." My blood ran cold. The maintenance ruse. It was an old trick, one I'd even used in a screenplay once. Beatrice wasn't waiting for Friday. She was moving now. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Marcus. "Ava, I found it," he said, his voice urgent. "Beatrice just authorized a $20,000 wire transfer to a company called Apex Logistics. They aren't movers, Ava. They're a private security firm known for discreet extractions. And get this, they have a private jet fueled and waiting at Midway Airport. Departure set it for 3:30 a.m. I looked at my watch, 1:45 a.m. We had less than 2 hours. "Where is the jet going, Marcus?" "Hamptons International, 5 miles from the Sterling estate." "Those bastards!" I hissed. I looked at Maria. "Pack a bag for Noah, now!" "Just the essentials." "Where are we going?" "To the only place they can't touch us," I said. "The spotlight." I knew how Beatrice worked. She thrived in the shadows, using her influence to bribe judges and silence witnesses. But she was terrified of a scandal. She valued the Sterling name above all else. If I could drag her into the public eye, she would crumble. I pulled out my laptop and opened my contact list. I didn't call another lawyer. I called Sarah Jenkins, the lead investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune. "Sarah, it's Ava Montgomery. I have a story for you. It's got everything. Embezzlement, a secret mistress, and a grandmother plotting to kidnap her own grandson tonight. And I have the recordings to prove it." "Ava? Are you serious? Where are you?" Sarah sounded like she'd already grabbed her notepad. I'm at my penthouse. I'm about to be extracted by a private militia hired by Beatrice Sterling. If you want the scoop of the decade, get a camera crew to Midway Airport, Hangar 4, in 1 hour. I'm going to give Beatrice the finale she deserves. I hung up and turned to Maria. We're not hiding, Maria. We're going to the airport, but we're not getting on that plane. But the police. The police will follow us, but Sarah's cameras will protect us. Beatrice can buy a judge, but she can't buy the evening news. I grabbed my coat and Noah's diaper bag. My heart was pounding, a rhythmic drumbeat of war. Julian and Beatrice thought I was just a writer, someone who sat in a room and imagined things. They forgot that writers are the ones who decide who lives and who dies in the end. As we headed back to the elevator, the lights in the hallway flickered and died. The hum of the building's ventilation system cut out. They're here, I whispered, pulling Noah closer to my chest. Maria, stay behind me. The elevator dinged. The doors opened, but it wasn't the police. 2 men in tactical gear, faces obscured by masks, stepped out. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a high-decibel personal alarm, a prop from my last movie, and pulled the pin. The screeching wail was deafening, echoing through the maze, the concrete hall. Noah, cover your ears! I yelled. In the chaos of the noise, I didn't run away. I ran toward them, swinging my heavy designer tote bag with all the momentum of a mother's rage. I caught the first man in the side of the head, the heavy hardware of the bag drawing blood. You want my son? I roared over the alarm. You'll have to kill me first! The high-decibel alarm was still screaming, a piercing shriek that turned the luxury hallway into a sonic nightmare. The man I hit stumbled back, clutching his ear, but the second intruder lunged forward. He was professional, fast, and cold. He reached for the strap of Noah's carrier, his eyes devoid of emotion. Touch him and you're a dead man! I shrieked, fueled by an adrenaline I didn't know I possessed. I shoved Maria toward the stairwell door. Go! Run to the lobby! I didn't wait to see if she moved. I turned back to the intruder, my fingers fumbling for the pepper spray I'd tucked into my pocket. I caught him right in the goggles. It didn't blind him, but it gave me the 3 seconds I needed. I didn't run for the stairs. I ran for the elevator they had just exited. The doors were closing. I dived inside, the screech of the alarm following me until the metal doors sealed shut. Silence, heavy and thick, replaced the noise. Mama? Noah whimpered, his small hands clutching my neck. It's okay, baby. We're just playing a game. I whispered, though my heart was hitting my ribs like a caged bird. I didn't go to the lobby. I knew they'd have men at every exit. I pressed the button for the 4th floor parking garage. When the doors opened, I sprinted to the nondescript SUV I had rented under a pen name months ago, a precaution I'd taken for a script that was now saving my life. I threw Noah into the car seat, buckled him with shaking hands, and floored it. The drive to Midway Airport was a blur of red lights and sirens in the distance. I saw the black SUVs of Apex Logistics in my rearview mirror twice, but I knew the back streets of Chicago better than any mercenary. I arrived at Hangar 4 at 3:10 a.m. The private jet was there, its engines whining, a sleek silver Predator waiting to steal my child, and standing by the boarding stairs, looking impeccably composed despite the hour, was Beatrice Sterling. I slammed the SUV into park and stepped out, holding my phone high. Ava! Beatrice called out, her voice amplified by the wind. Don't be difficult. Hand over the boy and we can end this nightmare. You're outnumbered, and as you know, I have the law on my side." "The law?" I walked toward her, my shadow stretching long under the hangar lights. "You mean the judge you bribed?" "He's currently being questioned by the FBI, Beatrice. My lawyer made sure of that an hour ago." Beatrice's eyes flickered with a hint of doubt. "A bluff? You're a writer, Ava. You lie for a living." "Then let's see if the cameras lie," I said, pointing toward the airport perimeter. Suddenly, 3 news vans from the Chicago Tribune and Channel 7 burst through the security gate, followed closely by 3 police cruisers. Sarah Jenkins was the first one out, a cameraman right behind her. "Mrs. Sterling," Sarah shouted, her microphone thrust forward, "can you comment on the allegations of attempted kidnapping and the offshore embezzlement of $750,000? Beatrice's face transformed. The regal mask shattered, revealing a terrified, aging woman. She looked at the cameras, then at the police, then at me. "This is a private family matter," she hissed, trying to shield her face with her fur. "Not anymore," I said, my voice ringing out over the roar of the jet engines. "Tonight, the credits roll on the Sterlings. You wanted a scene, Beatrice? You're on the front page." Detective Morales stepped forward, his badge gleaming under the floodlights. "Beatrice Sterling, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and obstruction of justice." As the handcuffs clicked around Beatrice's wrists, she looked at me with a hatred so pure it should have burned. But I felt nothing. No triumph, no joy. Just a profound sense of relief. I turned back to my car, where Noah was watching the flashing lights with wide, curious eyes. I climbed into the back seat and pulled him into my lap, burying my face in his hair. "Is the game over, Mama?" he asked softly. "Yes, Noah," I whispered, the tears finally coming. "The bad guys are gone, and we're finally home." The aftermath was a whirlwind of flashing lights and legal jargon. By dawn, the Sterling name, once a symbol of Chicago's architectural elite, was being dragged through the mud of every news cycle in the country. Headlines like "Architectural Dynasty Crumbles, Embezzlement and Abduction Plot Revealed" scrolled across the bottom of every TV screen. I sat in the back of Detective Morales's cruiser, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, watching as they loaded Beatrice into a separate transport. She still held her head high, but the fur coat looked like a shroud. She was a relic of a dying era, a woman who thought money could rewrite morality. "You're a hell of a witness, Ava," Morales said, leaning against the car door. "Most people would have folded. You turned it into a blockbuster." "I didn't have a choice," I replied, my voice raspy. "When you're fighting for your son, you don't follow a script. You just survive." I went back to the penthouse one last time. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of my mistakes. I walked through the rooms, seeing the ghosts of a marriage that had been a hollow shell. Julian's expensive scotch bottles were still on the counter. Sarah's scent, a cloying, cheap perfume, still lingered in the guest room. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Ava, the board of directors for Sterling Architecture just met," he said, sounding exhausted but satisfied. "They've officially stripped Julian of his title. And since you own the majority of the shares and provided the evidence of his fraud, they're asking you to step in as interim chair to oversee the liquidation." "Liquidation?" "The firm is toxic, Ava, but the assets are worth millions. Once we sell off the holdings and settle the debts, you and Noah will be looking at a payout of roughly $12 million. That's after the $450,000 you're clawing back from the offshore accounts." $12 million. It was a staggering amount, yet it felt like a heavy weight. It was the price of 10 years of my life, my tears, and my son's safety. "Sell it all, Marcus," I said firmly. "I don't want the name. I don't want the legacy. Wipe the slate clean." I walked into the nursery. Noah was finally back in his bed, guarded by 2 uniformed officers at the door. He was clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his breathing deep and rhythmic. I picked up a framed photo from the nightstand, a picture of Julian, Noah, and me at the lake 3 years ago. We looked so happy, so normal. I realized then that Julian hadn't just become a monster. He had always been one, hidden beneath a layer of my own hope. I took the photo out of the frame, tore Julian's face out of it, and dropped the scrap into the trash can. "New chapter, Noah," I whispered. I spent the next 3 days in meetings with lawyers and PR experts. Julian called me from the Cook County Jail, his voice sobbing, begging for me to drop the charges for the sake of our history. "Our history is a horror story, Julian," I told him before hanging up, "and I just wrote the end." The last person I saw before leaving Chicago was Liam. He met me at a coffee shop near the courthouse. He looked older, his face lined with the stress of his impending plea deal. "I'm sorry, Ava," he said, looking at his hands. "I really am. I hope one day you can let me see Noah." "Maybe in 10 years, Liam," I said, standing up, "when you've proven you're a man and not a shadow. Until then, stay away from us." I walked out of the shop and into the crisp Chicago air. A black town car was waiting to take us to O'Hare. Noah was already inside, buckled in and ready for an adventure. "Where are we going, Mommy?" he asked as the car pulled away from the curb. "To California, baby," I said, looking at the city skyline one last time. "To the sunshine. I have a new story to write, and this time, the ending is going to be beautiful." 6 months later, the air didn't taste like Chicago's exhaust and icy betrayal. It tasted like salt spray and blooming jasmine. I sat on the deck of our new home in Santa Barbara, watching the Pacific blue melt into the horizon. Here, the only drama I dealt with was on the pages of my newest screenplay. "Mommy, look, the castle is finished," Noah shouted from the sand below. He was tanned, healthy, and his laughter was no longer a sound I had to protect with a knife in my hand. He was just a child again. I smiled, leaning back into my chair. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a news alert from back home. "Final sentencing in Sterling fraud case. Julian Sterling, sentenced to 15 years. Matriarch Beatrice Sterling receives 8 years for conspiracy." I didn't feel the surge of anger I expected. The fire that had consumed me for months had finally burned out, leaving behind something stronger. Peace. Julian had tried to call me through his lawyer one last time, offering information in exchange for a character reference. I hadn't even bothered to respond. He was a ghost in a prison cell, a character I had long ago edited out of my life. My agent, Sarah, called a moment later. "Ava, the studio just saw the first draft of The Architect's Wife. They're losing their minds. It's raw, it's visceral, and they want to fast-track production. They're asking who you want for the lead." I looked down at the sand where Noah was happily destroying his sandcastle to build a bigger one. "Tell them I want someone who looks like they've walked through hell and didn't just survive. They owned it," I said. "And tell them the title is changing. It's not The Architect's Wife anymore. It's just the director." "I love it," Sarah laughed. "By the way, did you hear about Liam?" "What about him?" "He's working at a construction site in Ohio." "Actually working, Ava. No trust fund, no sterling name." "Apparently, he told a local reporter he finally felt like he could breathe." "Good for him," I said, and I actually meant it. I didn't want them to suffer forever. I just wanted them away from my son's future. I hung up the phone and walked down the wooden stairs to the beach. The sand was warm between my toes. I knelt beside Noah, helping him reinforce the walls of his new fortress. "Is this one strong, Mommy?" he asked, looking at me with those clear, trusting eyes. The strongest, I promised, because we built it together. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the coast, I realized that my life was no longer a series of takes and rewrites dictated by someone else's greed. I was finally holding the camera. I was the one who decided when the scene ended and when the next one began. I had lost a husband, a home, and a legacy I thought defined me. But in the wreckage, I had found the one thing Julian could never steal: my voice. The credits were finally rolling on the tragedy of the Sterlings. And as for Ava Montgomery, her story was only just beginning. Don't let kindness make you weak. Stay sharp, stay independent, and never let anyone else hold the pen to your story. Build your own happy ending. Thanks for listening. If you liked this story, please like, comment, and follow for more. See you in the next one.